Hello, everyone. This is Manolo Concepcion. I am the new associate head coach at Eastern Illinois University here in the United States in the NCAA Division One. I am born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I have been involved with volleyball and coaching since 2002, 2003, where I began my career in Puerto Rico. I have coached in the Pro League in both men's and women's in Puerto Rico with people like Javier Gaspar and Monchito Hernandez, who are two of my biggest mentors from Puerto Rico. Then I have coached here in the NJCAA Division One and then NCAA Division One. And basically, my passion has been working with rebuilding programs, training and development, and most of all, motor learning. I'm obsessed with learning. I'm obsessed with the process of getting better. And that's one of the reasons that I began this project of Volley Junkies a couple of months ago to try to gather information from people around the world in different communities and see how they did things, and see how they got into their own conclusions. So we've been getting, great guests where they have been able to share their experiences. They have been able to share what they do. And hopefully the people are watching out there, are continue to get better along the way. Please continue to like and follow the Volley Junkies page where you can find every single podcast that we have had so far. And we're going to continue with this project. This doesn't stop here. I just want to remind you that, before I introduce the guest today, tomorrow we're going to have Kevin Hambley, the NCAA national champion. And then some of the guests that are coming in as well are going to be Giuseppe Benci, who's the creator of Volleymetrics. He's going to be with us on Sunday. On Monday, we're going to have Trevor Regan, who is the creator of Training Ugly and now called the Learning Lab. And then I just want to give you a brief reminder that Saturday, June 6th, we're going to have Bernardinho in our program. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to one of the best coaches in the U.S. And the current head coach for the Canadian national team and University of Georgia, Mr. Tom Black. How are you, Tom?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking at this list of guests and I'm going to try not to lower the bar.
No, not at all, man. Not at all. The feedback, I told you behind the scenes, the feedback that I'm getting from you is that you're one of the best in the business, Tom. So yeah, very excited of having this great conversation with you today. Tell me, how are you spending these hard times, Tom?
Yeah, probably pretty similar to most of the people watching this. A lot of Zooms, mainly with Georgia, and a lot of calls with Canada. And I think one of the bright spots, I've been able to homeschool my 7-year-old in the mornings. So that's been a huge bright spot for me because just like a lot of us, just been traveling so much away from home so much and trying to make up for a little bit lost time. And that's been really special. So.
Let's start with that. What a 7-year-old teaches you about learning?
Yeah, well, I mean, no one's going to call me. Well, I don't know. Most of the time, I'm not described as super patient. So right there, right there, there's a fair amount of tension with someone who's not super patient and a 7-year-old. Yeah, I think the thing I like the most, there's just all these little moments to kind of teach behavior a little bit that even just normal dad-daughter stuff, I don't know if I would have seen it as clearly as when you're actually trying to tackle something together. Hey, there's a reason this frustration is happening. There's an opportunity here, all those kind of things. I mean, you definitely do that as a dad, but I think because when you're teaching them, you're so locked in on a specific thing together. You get to see them in a different light. So I'm really enjoying that. And again, just trying to make up for lost time in those moments. So that it's been pretty cool.
What have you discovered from yourself that you didn't know throughout this crisis, Tom? Before we head back into the past, can you tell me a little bit about, the self-discovering of this process right now?
I think the analogy I've been using, if you're running on the treadmill at 11 and you want more balance in your life, so you go down to a 9, in that moment, you feel like you're doing the right thing, but you're still going pretty fast, And so it's, now we're at a 5 and you just see things differently, especially when we're 2 months in it. So there's just an opportunity take stock of a lot of things in a way that we're just never. I hope we never have this time again. So we probably never will. So yeah, I mean, it's when you're going at 11 or you're going at a 9, you're just not looking at yourself, and sort of you try to, but yeah, it's just more of a spotlight on things that I probably wouldn't have had the chance to spend some time on. So.
Let's go for a little traveling into the past, and tell me, who are your biggest influencers as a coach? Who have made you into the person that you are today?
Well, for sure, the top is my dad. I mean, he was just a huge leadership example for me, just as a man and just his daily example. That's definitely number one. And then right behind that is a guy. His name is Ken Stanley, but he goes by Big Daddy. He was the longtime coach at LA Pierce Junior College, obviously in LA. Mm-hmm. And just incredible. He's actually in John Wooden's book as the toughest competitor he ever coached against.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a nice little story. Big Daddy was like a center or power forward for USC, and obviously John Wooden coached for UCLA. And I heard the story. Big Daddy told me the story, so it's pretty fun. I read about it in Wooden's book, and then Big Daddy told me the story personally, so it's cool to get that little interplay. But basically, Big Daddy, he knew how to set a pick. He could really set a pick, and I guess he was just leveling some of the UCLA guys. But they were clean plays, and I guess Wooden said something to the ref like, "Are you going to throw that butcher out of the game?" Or he said something kind of derogatory. And I guess after the game, Big Daddy went up to John Wooden and he said, "Hey, coach, I really respect you, but when you said something like that, I completely lost my desire to play." And Wooden just walked off and didn't say anything. And I guess a day later, Big Daddy got a phone call from Wooden apologizing, and they became really close friends for the rest of their lives. It was a pretty cool story. But anyways,
wow.
Yeah, he was the number one mentor to me. He was the first one to really expose me to the laws of learning, and just there's this whole science behind coaching, and you don't just get to do whatever you think is right. That there's actually some principles. So I owe everything to him, on so many levels. And then after that, as it kind of went down the path, Carl McGowan was a huge influence. Just really miss him, just like a lot of us do. Mm-hmm. Jim McLaughlin's been amazing to me. Ron Larson spent a ton of time. He really spent a lot of time with me and really helping me understand the application of the principles, like, just long phone calls and letting me go through my practice plans. And I remember I actually had him sit on my practice at UCSD. It was the first head coaching collegiate job I had. And so he watched the whole practice. He put his hand on my shoulder after. He goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know you're going to be a great coach. Nothing you did today transferred." So
at least you started with a great, with
oh yeah, that was like, that taught me as much as anything. Okay, this is how you deliver constructive criticism. Okay.
Oh man, I've been saying the story of how I started with this loss of learning, how Carl McGowan basically hit me in the face, in a symbolic way in 2003 with that reality of me trying to brag to him about how good I was because I brought him to one of my club practices, and at that point when he was in Puerto Rico for vacation. And then, he's like, "What in the world are you doing? There's no direct transfer to anything that you're doing in practice so far." So my plan didn't work. It was a failure. But that got me into this obsession about learning. How was that process like? What were the things that you found out that you did not know?
Oh, geez. Like, can you put that in more context? What do you
mean? Well, in terms of yourself, of the needs that you had as a coach, like you felt like really strongly about some things until that moment happened that you discovered the loss of learning. Like, what were those things, from yourself as a coach?
Well, first, it's one thing to argue about something, but when you're hit in the face with the truth, and it's really the truth, and it's like it's hard to deny it. And so I think, I don't know. I think one of the challenges for coaching that we all go through, especially when we first start, you're not getting into coaching if you don't care about the sport, if you don't care about the people. We're not doing this for the money. Obviously, like, you can get to a point where money becomes better, but nobody gets into coaching because they're going to be rich and famous, right? So, I think for the most part, you're getting into coaching for some good reasons. And just like parenting or teaching, you're not getting paid a lot. You love the game. You want to impart your knowledge. So it's not just a job. It's very personal. Mm-hmm. So when people criticize your coaching, like you're taking like they're criticizing you, and I think it takes a while to realize. And I think that was one of the hardest things, especially me. Like, I was coming out of my playing days, so I had this super high ego, and again, it was I figured out how to coach, and I know how to do this, and it takes a minute to understand that like no matter how emotionally wrapped up you are in this, the facts are still over here. And that's something Carl would just hammer people endlessly on too, right? So I mean, the thing with Big Daddy, like he would just constantly I'd be like, I feel. He's like, I don't care how you feel. Like, and he would just kind of over and over and over again. And one story I've told a lot. He was the first time I really got exposed to like there's a whole body of knowledge about coaching. You can't just do whatever you want. So he would I would just be spending all his time on stuff, and he would rip it apart in 30 seconds, and it would be a million times better. And I was just trying to like kind of crack the code. I mean, he obviously knew stuff I didn't know. So I just remember all this time, like I was substitute teaching, and he finally made a deal with me that, okay, hey, like twice a week, come over for dinner, and we'll just go over like what we're gonna do for the week, and we'll talk about coaching. And so I said, okay. So I would substitute teach. I put the video in. You're about 8 hours of class, and I would just work on the practice, and I would just think about how he was going to try to tear it up or what he was going to say. And I would just spend so much time on it. I'd bring it over for dinner and just be X, and then same thing, 5 seconds of better. I kept doing that for months, and it was so brutal that like, man, I finally learned a lot. I remember we had this fall session with the guys. So there's like 4 months, and the last day of practice, I remember the practice was over, and he just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Good job, Tom." And it meant everything. I just won the Super Bowl. It was unbelievable.
Oh my God. Have you had players from that past saying, "Coach, I'm glad that you have grown into who you are today because you used to do this and this"? Like, what were some of the things that you look back and you say, "Did I really did that in practice? Did I really did that during a game?"
Oh yeah, I mean, it still happens. I mean, obviously you're making mistakes all the time. I mean, it's part of being at the edge of your abilities, right? But yeah, I was just, geez Louise, it's embarrassing. I mean, it sucks. It's embarrassing because it's like that's how it's got to happen sometimes. But yeah, just so many things. And I mean, I just remember Big Daddy just saying like, "Hey, I saw you doing that, and I'm really just cringing. I'm just cringing thinking about you doing that." And I'm just wondering. We just had so many moments like that. So yeah, just for sure, I've had John Mayer is he's a great coach now, the beach coach at Loyal Marymount, but a great beach player. He can tell you. I mean, I coached him in high school, junior college, and then professionally. So he's got a better perspective than anyone of just how awful I was. And so I might be average now, but awful to average is a big leap. So I'll take it. That's a lot of growth.
But at the same time, because of those mistakes, Tom, you have continued to become a better learner. And someone that has probably improved the quality of those mistakes throughout it, and it has made you the coach that you are today. So tell me that experience at LMU, because you did something wonderful there about first of all building from within, like what people say around that program that you did and how you did it. Definitely admirable. And so I'm really curious about what were your first goals and objectives when you got into a program? And I want to know also if you impose everything you wanted since day one, or you compromise to a happy medium with the student athletes that you found there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting question. Well, I mean, I saw a gold mine initially at LMU. I mean, I grew up right around there, and I knew how gorgeous the campus was, and I knew how amazing the location was, and I knew people wanted to play there. So it's you got to believe in your principles, and if you think people want to come there, I just thought we could get it going. So I thought it was a huge opportunity when I got it. I was like, I wasn't even in the first round of interviews. I remember that. So it took forever. This is hard for me to believe. It's still hard for me to believe this, but I think they offered the first 3 people, turned it down. I can't get my head around that because I think it's a great job.
How things work that way. That you were not the first option, but then they end up, getting the perfect candidate.
Oh, not perfect, but you just got to hang in there sometimes. But yeah, so I just thought it was a really good opportunity, and I feel like I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. Like, what do you?
Well, basically, what I'm wanting to know is like, what were the objectives when you got there, and then if you compromise into the actual vision that you had until you had your own players, or you just went there in day one, say this is how we do things, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, the objective was to make it great, and I thought we could, and I think it's really a balance. I mean, when you're and I feel like we've gone so far on the autonomy tree. Like, I mean, it used to be like command and control. And now we're just like, let the inmates run the asylum. And I don't think that's reality. And there's some principles. It's kind of like how Big Daddy was teaching me too, or Carl. I don't get to have an opinion on does motor learning exist. And I don't get to have an opinion on is serving and passing the most important parts of the game. I mean, like we don't have to follow that law. Like for sure, we have a choice over that. But like, that's kind of insanity, right? So I think, and that's the part that I had some belief and some confidence in. If we follow these principles and we do them mindfully, we can't help but get better. And I think the things where you got to bend, if I don't think even bend is the right word. It's everyone wants to be respected, right? Everyone wants to have an opportunity to see how good they can be. Everyone wants to feel like they're in a disciplined environment. They want to feel like there's some purpose in what they're doing, right? So I think that's a collaboration. That's not bending. I mean, I think those things are just as much laws as motor learning, but there's no way that I right now at this moment know exactly what that means for you, right? I mean, like we got to talk about it and adjust and collaborate, and you got to feel like you're being heard, and I need to feel like I'm being heard, and we got to figure it out. And so I think that's about like, of course you're gonna adjust and compromise on that stuff, right? But it's not. I hate that word compromise. It's not even a compromise. It's just figuring it out. But it's figuring it out in a way that, yes, I feel like I'm making the decision to do this common goal, right? It's not, you're not like imposing your will on me, because that's only going to work for a short period of time. But we all know that, I think, at this point. Yeah.
Once you get there, like, do you even sell or talk about motor learning to the student athletes, or you just apply it? At that age, if you go into the gym and say, guys, guess what? Everything that we're going to do here is based on motor learning. Like, do you actually talk about it, or you just apply it and they learn through the way?
My experience is the higher the level you go, the more you got to explain stuff like that, because the athlete's more invested in their development. And I think the caveat might be, if you're at a low level program, when I say low level, I mean like low skill level, like maybe they're younger or whatever. I don't mean like less important. But they've had like a long tradition of success a different way. That might be a time where you'd have to really like, because they're like, why am I changing? It doesn't make sense to me. But you're making me, there's really, there's no script for this sometimes. I remember my first meeting at LMU, and I was all fired up. Like I had all these, like I had like this little 1-page thing on deliberate practice. And I had like this, like, I was, like, this is how we're going to do it and all this stuff. So I just, obviously, like anyone, you're spending all this time on it. Like, we're going to practice like this, and this is what it means, and it's going to lead to this. And like, I mean, you're just going into it. And it's my first Division I job. Hand goes up. Do you care what color socks we wear?
Oh boy.
What? And so I kind of brushed it on. Hand goes up. Do you care if we tuck our shirts? Obviously, they've been in a highly structured environment, and they were like stressing about stuff, but it was just like, they don't care about this at all. I think every first meeting I've had has been so different. And I think that was one of the big lessons as I kept going through different opportunities and different jobs. Like, the principles are the same, but the methods change, right? It's a big, like, this program might need to be developed and this program might need to be developed, but you can't assume that you know exactly what needs to happen, because you don't. It's just 12 different people from a different part of the world at a different circumstance, and that's part of the figuring out, even though the principles in the end are the same. Like, how those are going to happen are always unique, right? So
who determines the process of learning? The athlete or the teacher? Like, how do you determine in what moment you're in with each student athlete? And then do you work differently with each of the student athletes in the same skill?
Yeah, you have to work differently. I mean, when you say that question, it kind of makes me think of like the time we're in now, when they ask about the timeline and they say the virus determines the timeline. It's not like I I don't determine the learning, and the player doesn't determine the learning. The situation dictates the learning, and we all have a role in it, right? So it's I think that's kind of more the way to look at it. Yeah.
When the difference between being in LMU and then going out to the University of Georgia, is there a different base to start from? And before we head into Canada, is there a different base to start from? Is there a different type of athlete? Is there a different type of mindset? How do you base that beginning of your motor learning principles intro, basically?
Well, yeah, I think that was one of the mistakes I made, and I learned a really good lesson. I thought Georgia was going to be LMU 2.0, right? Because that was LMU was the first time they were both similar. Last place team, picked to finish last, won somewhere between 0 to 2 conference games the years before. So I thought it was apples to apples. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it wasn't. LMU's in the West Coast, Georgia's in the South, in the South, right? LMU's a mid-major, Georgia's in the SEC, like the biggest money conference of all of them. LMU is it's sandwiched between USC and UCLA, which was kind of my personality anyways, like an underdog personality. And Georgia's the flagship school of the state. So I definitely went in I'm just going to do the exact same thing. And we did the same principles, and the training looked very similar, but the profile of the athlete was just very different. And I don't mean that at all good or bad. I just mean it was different. Mm-hmm. But a mistake I made was I'm coaching the same players, and I'm not. They went to Georgia for different reasons than LMU players went to LMU, and it was a different culture, different vibe. And so I think one of the things I was assuming going into Georgia was, well, if they're losing, they're lazy. They're just not working hard. Because people are going to lose every single game. And it's that was crap. These girls worked their tails off. They worked so hard. I couldn't believe it. And so I had to recalibrate really quickly. Okay, work ethic is not the problem. They really do care. And it was just a great lesson for me. It's not, you don't know why things are happening until you get to look under the hood. So I was too quick to judge, and it was a really valuable lesson. I'm really grateful for it. It helped me a ton before I went to Canada.
When you were in LMU, there is a story that that you mentioned that maybe one of your best players was one of the best players because she was the best at not moving. And you refer, of course, to reading. Can you tell me why is that so important? Why is that concept so important? And tell me a little bit about the implementation of it.
You make me think about Betsy Flint. So she's one of the top beach players out there. Great coach, amazing person. I kind of got that kind of got planted in my head. I heard Marv Dunphy give a talk maybe 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a funny moment, but he took one of his players. He goes, "You're one of the best defenders on this team because you're so damn slow." You're too slow to make any wrong movements. You have to make the right movement, or else you have no shot. And it was that always stuck in my head, and I was okay, so people who read well tend to be simple. It was just kind of in my head, and it just reminded me of Betsy because she wasn't the fastest person, but she didn't make any false movements because she just wouldn't go until she knew, right? I mean, she didn't go until she saw, and it was just a good lesson. Yeah.
So tell me about reading. You go into a program. I think that reading is so subjective that it's also as difficult as selling motor learning in general in a program. So if I'm a coach going into a program and I say that reading is probably, if not the number one of the number one priorities for me, how do I start? Where do I begin? What are the most important things that I need to know about reading?
No, I'm not the expert on this by any means. And I don't know if I totally agree. I don't think reading's subjective. I just think there's a lot about it we don't know yet, right? We have eye sequences that we think are probably correct, but we don't totally know, right? And then I think we also know that you and I can read a certain skill at a high level, but it's still going to be different. Your eye work pattern is going to be a little different than mine, which is that's the ambiguity of it. So I don't know if that's the same subjective. I think it's just more. I think we just have more to learn. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's it's like Carl always says, I got to teach you how to move, then I got to teach you how to see, and then I'm going to spend the rest of my life teaching you how to do both things well, right? So it's that's the deal. I mean, for me, I'm just looking for false movements, and I can see it. If that first move doesn't make sense, you clearly didn't read it. So then we can go to the eyes, and then you're always trying to balance between, and there's just a progression. I'm going to teach you how to move, and as long as the environment is really blocked, I can get you moving pretty well in a fairly quick amount of time. But as soon as we add the eye work element to it, the movement's going to get disrupted, right? Because the brain's overloaded, and then that's part. So we just gotta, I mean, I'm getting in the weeds now, but we just gotta stay at that level of visual stimulus until the movement comes up, and then we can increase it, and then on and on and on until you get to that autonomous phase.
What's the role of guided discovery in that process? So if I'm working with an athlete teaching her or him how to see or what to see, how do I use guided discovery for that? Can you provide examples of how are you using that now in Georgia, and then maybe now also with your national team in Canada?
Yeah, I'm just laughing, just thinking of times I screwed that up. But it's important. It's an important tool. I don't think it's the end all be all that I would have said it was like 5 years ago, but it's an important tool. I know I was definitely using it wrong a lot when I was trying to get players to explain to me why I was right or why I was wrong. I think we know enough now that that's creating a thought process in the motor pattern that we don't want. So I think you can overdo it for sure. But the important, you're just looking for engagement, right? Yeah, we're looking for engagement in a way that's going to allow for skill transfer, right? So we can be really engaged. I know for myself as a player, like I was engaged, I worked hard, but I was doing it from a mindset that was really inhibiting transfer. So we're looking for you to feel the movement and to recognize the visual cues, but sometimes you don't even have to do that in a conscious process. So I think as a coach, I'm just looking like for the level of success you can get in the skill. Like, am I seeing a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 level of repeatability? And then I don't want to get in the way of that. I don't want to get in your thought process there. So I think you use all the tricks in your bag, how you need to use it, but you're basically just looking, is the skill happening at a level of repeatability that's going to allow for success, right?
What do you mean about feeling the movement? When you're talking about that, what do you mean about that? Like, if I'm an athlete,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so the reason a lot of players have no idea what they're doing, or like the reason, so a lot of great players will explain the skill in a way that's 1,000% wrong. It's like, that's not at all what they do. Like they don't move like that. They don't see it. And they're speaking with like total conviction. And that's just a great example of how different teaching is from coaching, right? Because they don't need to explain it to you. They don't even need to be able to explain it to themselves. They need to be able to do it at the right time in the right way. Right. So they need to recognize the cues, and they need to have some kind of feeling that I know what to do. Right. And then, sometimes you got to work through it, and sometimes you got to be able to explain it. But sometimes people just figure stuff out and like get out of the way. Right. So if they're doing it, don't make them start explaining it if they're doing it well. And like I said, I think the proof's in the pudding. I don't know how many clips we can pull up of someone saying, like, the famous thing is Ted Williams, like, I saw the stitches on the ball. Like, no, you didn't. Like, you can prove it. But is that really what's important? What's important is that he could recognize what ball was coming, and he knew how to swing. And it doesn't matter that he could explain it. Right?
That's true, actually, and it's been proven that in batting, and the anticipation is the skill that is being developed when you bat. It's not actually the eye contact thing. Quick question: what makes me a good learner or a bad learner? If I'm a student athlete, and if I'm a player in general, a national team level or college, what makes me a good or a bad learner? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, well, I think just get rid of those labels first of all. Like we don't need just the fact that you're judging that's going to take us out of it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's like that Yoda quote.
What makes me a better learner? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I just think it's about this moment right now. Are you learning or not? That's it. And do it again and again and again and again and again. And then when we find ourselves not learning, try to figure out why we're not learning, what's blocking us, and correct it. Right. And it's not about the label. It's nice when people call us good learners or great learners. Like, we all like that. Nobody wants to be called a bad learner. But if you're calling me a great learner, but I'm not learning in this moment, who cares? It's just about, right, am I learning right now, and am I doing the things I need to do to be able to learn?
Skills are specific to the task. Does this mean that I need to head into more randomness than block, or is there openness for any sort of balance in that regard? And where do you stand in your training with that?
Yeah, well, it's a fact, right? They're specific to the task. So until I can do that skill exactly how it needs to be performed in the manner that it needs to be performed, until I can do it again with a high level of repeatability, I'm not learning. So I have to get to that skill. And then the other side of that coin, what you're asking, is the pace of the learner, right? So in the very beginning, when I don't know that I don't know, I've never heard what you're talking about. It has to be very blocked. We're in that cognitive phase, but we're not in it very long, right? And it's kind of what we just talked about 5 minutes ago. It's just not that hard to teach people to move. It's not, right? We can get that going pretty quick. The hard part is moving like that as the visual stimulus goes up. So like that's the teaching progression. Is, you know, I've got it. We can't go straight into 6-on-6 because you can't handle it yet. But how similar can I make the visual environment while making the same move? And then I try to ramp it up. Like the analogy I use all the time. So I'm American, so I got to go straight to guns and military, right? So it's if I'm telling you, hey, in 4 weeks I'm going to send you out to war. You know, we're gonna throw you in Afghanistan and have you take out Al Qaeda. So you know you got to go through all these dark rooms and jungles and cliffs, and you don't know where they're coming from. There's IEDs all over the place, right? Like, okay, so first we got to learn how to shoot, and I set up a target 6 feet from you. I give you the gun you want. I make sure your grip's comfortable. Okay, don't raise the gun until you feel great. Okay, now lift it. Make sure you're comfortable. You got a good view of it. Okay, squeeze. Right? And we just do that until you just feel great at that. Like if I put a target, like I can shoot the heck out of this thing. And then in 4 weeks, I'm like, go get him. Like, what are you thinking in that environment, right? And like, not only am I going to die, but the people around me are going to die. So like we got to get out of that comfortable phase pretty quick. And I need to have people start diving in on you and start, like turning the lights on and off and like creating crazy sounds. And I got to wake you up at different times. And I just got to make it crazy and random. So when you get out there, you're like, I can handle this, right? But we don't do that in sports a lot. For a couple of reasons. One, I think one of it's really good intentions, just maybe not execution. We care. Like, I don't want to see them fail in practice. I want them to be good. So I want to make practice these perfect reps. It's coming from a good place. But it's like Richard Schmidt always said, are you practicing for practice or are you practicing for performance? Because performance is chaotic and crazy and, and wild. So we can't just pull the trigger with that target 6 feet in front. We got to train for the environment we're going to be in and find success within that. So.
Some people think that when they hear random or randomness, or in Spanish global, they think that it means like your practices are not organized, coach. Can you give me an example of how randomness provides that creativity but still provides the structure that you need as a coach?
Yeah, it's awesome. I read that in the talent code and I thought like, oh my God, that's my practice. Like I could or someone else like who's similar, like, I could give you this long talk on motor learning and maybe even make you kind of impressed. Like, oh wow, like there's a lot going on in here. And there's so many times I walk in my practice and like we're just playing volleyball, like you wouldn't know, like it doesn't look like anything, and it's so like you're dead right. It's crazy. Like we'll be in the middle of practice and I'm like, I spent an hour on this and it just looks like a game. Like we're just playing. But yeah, I mean, there is a high level of planning, but when you go out there, it just looks like volleyball most of the time because that's exactly what they have to do. And the planning comes in, obviously, how the balls are being entered and what the score is and who's going to play what position for what amount of time so they can get the reps they need. And then all the feedback you're going to give. And yeah, like I said, I can make it sound really impressive. Then you get out there and you're like, this, like there's a volleyball going and people are touching it. And big deal,
So tell me, are you getting into private planes and then coaching Canada during the day, and then at night you come back and coach Georgia? How are you making this happen? What's the trick? What are you doing?
Wrong sport. That's football. Those guys get. Yeah, I don't know how well it worked out, but the part, basically when Georgia wasn't in session, I was going to be in Canada. That's kind of how it worked out. So like that Christmas break and the summer break was when I was able to go to Canada. And because just the structure of the Canadian program, not really being able to like have full-time staff and all that, it kind of worked. Like they understood there had to be a part-time component to it. So it wasn't easy, but worked out okay for that period of time.
How are you working with, Canada is being recognized as one of the first countries that as a country, they establish LTAD at least in paper. So, I have seen in paper LTAD, online from Canada. That was actually one of my first resources maybe beginning, between 2005, 2006, I started researching about, okay, so I want to learn more about this LTAD thing. And then, there goes Canada with all this published stuff about LTAD and how to implement it at every level. So I'm really curious about, in Canada, are they implementing LTAD in every level? Or if not, then aside from the senior national team, what is your involvement with development?
Okay, I'm gonna have to profess my ignorance here. LTAD is what? Sorry.
LTAD, so it's long-term athletic development.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, that's okay. That's a big rock for us for sure. So I think the number one priority is to get Canada in the Olympics. So we fell short of that for this quad. And then the second big priority is to create a more robust development training system, especially for the college age kid, especially for that kid. Yeah, there's a gap right now that we're trying to fill. And then third is streamlining our principles, because it's a big country territory wise, but it's a relatively smaller country population wise, especially for a first world country. So if a smaller population isn't using that size to streamline its communication, you're taking away the advantage of it. So that's definitely that's one of our three big rocks for sure.
Are you trying to implement something like HP there in Canada? Like, is there a system where you want everyone using the same principles, Tom?
I would prefer that greatly, for sure. Yeah. We have a youth national program, and they're doing a great job, and they're definitely in line. And then, like I said, we have this gap in the college age, and we've created something called Next Gen. Shannon Windsor is our head coach for that. So that's starting to build, but we just started it. And then we have the national team, and we also have the college system, the youth sports, but we're also really tied in with the NCAA. So I mean, the NCAA is going to be its own animal for sure, but the level of competition within the NCAA helps us a lot. But if we can get the youth next gen national team, and the intent is there, we just need to spend the time to keep deepening it. But if we can get kids following these principles from 8 until 18, we can bridge the gap. But if it's you do this, learn 10 different ways to pass throughout your career. I mean, you might be able to get away with that when you have this massive population of great players, but if you're a tenth of that size and you're trying to, it's just we got to be streamlined. Yeah.
What is important to you as a coach? Like, if I am on your team, national team level or college level, what are the things that are non-negotiables?
As a coach, or what do you mean? As a
coach, like, what are things that are non-negotiable in your program? If I am playing for you, what are things that you prioritize the most?
Yeah, I mean, the non-negotiables for our training environment is that we follow these principles. I mean, I'll argue about methods all day long. I actually welcome that, but I'm not going to spend time on the principles. It's just a waste of time. So that's for the coaching staff. For the players, again, I think, the only international experience I had was USA. So I'd been in the USA gym for a long time. And that was kind of similar from LMU to Georgia. Like, USA to Canada is so different. But that was all I had. So I kind of made these assumptions that were wrong. But I think for Canada, for that gym, the non-negotiables are, it's just basically we need to work at a level that allows you to be world-class every day. And, for as big as that is, that means different things for different people. But we have to have our foot on the gas, and we have to understand that work. I think my non-negotiables for USA gym might be a little different, because I think one thing that's inherent in the USA gym is, like, I don't need to tell you that. Like, there's 10 people who want your place. I mean, it's so obvious every day as a tryout. Canada, we don't quite have the same depth. We're trying to produce that. So we need to have a little internal fire for what we're trying to do, and feel a deep sense of purpose that allows us to get after it every day. And I think that was one of the coolest things about that experience, is seeing that change from it's really nice to be on the national team, that's it, to I'm on this team to try to achieve something now. Like, what's the process that's going to allow that to happen? I think that was the coolest thing for me, is to be a part of that and witness that.
Measuring performance. Where do you stand in measuring process versus measuring outcome? Do you implement both of those matters, and how does it look in your gym?
I'm curious what your perspective is too, like, because you've been in a couple different, you've been at least, how many cultures have you been in, like, significantly too?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How many cultures have you really had to spend an extensive period of time in terms of like countries too for you?
Yeah, two.
Yeah, so I'm curious what you think, because I always thought of Canada as U.S. North, and so I kind of went in there with that attitude, and it's Canada. It's like, so if you're a Canadian, you're hearing this, you're like, that's so insulting, right? But I like just typical American, just kind of like cruised in there, like I knew what was going on, and it's not. It's got its totally different culture. It's its own country, and that was one thing I had to learn really quick. And to kind of answer your question, I
had
think
a big shock. I had a big shock when I got to a dark skinned Puerto Rican with an accent getting to my first gig in the US, to Kansas, to Colby, Kansas. So that was a big shock. For me and for the people that welcomed me there. I must say they treated me really well. I cannot complain, but it was definitely a shock.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me. I mean, I'm never gonna be able to do it, but I would love to, like coach in like 30 different countries, because it just really broadened my perspective in a way I never would have gone if I just would have stayed in the States, my whole life. But I think, I mean, the answer with your question, I think it's a loop. There's a process outcome loop, and the process obviously drives us to the outcome, but the outcome often fuels the process. And we also need to be able to look at the outcome objectively. Right, we can't just be like, well, I just didn't get it. I had a great process, I just didn't get it. Well, then what happened? I mean, so they should be fueling each other. It should be on a loop, and it should be getting both of them to higher and higher levels, hopefully, right? But I think one of the mistakes I made, I've only ever been in the States. I mean, obviously traveled, but in terms of like significant experience, I've only ever been in the States, and we're, in my opinion, we're such a hyper competitive culture that the general message is, like, stop thinking about the outcome so much. Like you're just stressing on it because we just want to achieve so badly, and it's, it can get ruthless here. It can get like basically just cutthroat, because there's so many people in this country, and there's so many people who are good at what they do in this country, that it's like you just got to fight and tooth and claw for every age. So that's really cool. But I really think I've said this a couple times. I really think in the States, it's all about the process, not the outcome, as long as you win. Yeah, and
that should be a quote for sure, 100%. Yeah.
and but going into Canada, at least, yeah. This is for Canada, but not all Canada, because like Canadian hockey is kind of, I think, what I just described for States, where it's just like going for it. But Canadian women's volleyball was it's all about the process, and that's it. And like, so like, what I learned from that was, yeah, if you're not connected to the outcome, it's there's not a lot of juice in the process. I mean, and so it was a big lesson to me, because I think we're more aware of the outcome than I think we even recognize in the States, because it's just in your face, like constantly, and for Canadian women's volleyball, I just noticed a little bit more of a, yeah, it sure would be nice. And it was so foreign to me, because I think especially with USA, I was spending so much time like trying to calm down, like it'll happen, I promise, like just focus on your approach. And but we kind of have to flip it a little bit.
Yeah, it's part of the culture in general. With capitalism being so hard here, and having more socialism, more in Canada, where free healthcare and other matters that create that camaraderie between people, and wanting to kind of like more sharing more than anything else, and more trying to do things together than anything else. So yeah, I think that it starts from there, and then volleyball is just a microorganism of that production of the culture. So definitely what you're saying. And how do you connect that outcome then? Like, and what outcome do you connect? Do you just get into the Canadian national team and say, hey, we're gonna be in the Olympics, or what's your main objective right now, like realistically with Canada?
Oh, right now, well, I mean, if you want me to back up, I mean, I started off with like, hey, this is where I think we can be, and this is what it's going to take. And everyone's like, yeah, and then we get in the first day of practice, and like, we're going to start in 5 minutes, and people are still tying their shoes. And I was just totally thrown. And it was crazy. It was like our balls weren't all inflated, and I couldn't find the whiteboard. And it was just like, oh my God, like, we were so starting from scratch. It was crazy. it was a great, like, I kind of liked it because I've just coming from USA and from Georgia, like I'm in just such these environmentally rich learning training environments. Like it felt almost fun in a way. I wasn't happy for Canada volleyball. That's where we're at, but it felt like a good challenge and just totally outside of. I feel like I was kind of going back to my junior college, my high school days, a little bit club volleyball.
And it makes sense, and it's great that you're mentioning this. That you, as a national team level coach, for people to know, we all have the same problems. No matter the level. Look at you struggling with, people trying to get to practice on time. Trying to get the resources that you need for training. So all those matters are typical problems, no matter the level, no matter the country around the world. And so that's why it's interesting to hear you say, stuff like that, because it put things in perspective. But yeah, please continue. So the outcome.
So it was great. And it was just a big lesson. It was kind of something I was hammering just throughout the program. It was like, hey, like until everything we have in this structure is being used 100%, I don't want to hear anything about not having money. Like, cause we can't, like, money's not going to happen until we maximize what we have. And we have smart people and we have balls that need to be inflated and we have a whiteboard that's not like, so when we start using this stuff, like to the hilt, then we can start complaining about like money. But what's going to happen is as we use this stuff, money's going to start.
I love that. So maximizing, even if you have little resources, maximizing what you have, controlling the controllables, basically.
Well, yeah, because yes, and I mean the way I saw it, like it's not just that we have 10 balls or 9 balls or 20 balls. We have these principles. Like, these principles are powerful, right? Like, so it's, I mean, if we use this ball in a more principle-based way, and you magnify that over the 60 training days we have, that's massive. That's huge. So, like, I was just trying to keep our blinders, on those things because we knew it would pay off. But through that, I think one mantra we started developing over the 2 weeks. I mean, I'll just share this with you because I had to spend one day. I had to clip out all the most egregious non-effort plays in practice and show it to them the next day before practice and make them tell me about it because we just hit a low. But there was another time we had a practice where we taught them how to practice. Like we would not start a drill until everyone behaved in a way that showed stuff but if you would have told me I would have done that going in, I just like, no, I'm not going to. But we developed a mantra of if you were in the Olympics, would you do that? It kind of became like a real simple catchphrase. And one of our players really took to it and kind of spread it a little bit. Would you warm up like this? Would you play like this? And they came, I thought all of us, we came a really long way. So I think Canada is capable of great things. I really do. And I think as we, I think we're at a different place mentally as a program. And I think we do have really good players and we have a lot of great coaches and people that are motivated. And it's going to be a process, obviously, but it's something I believe in and I think we're more than capable of.
I can already see your signature on those teams. If you compare for the people watching, if you see LMU, if you see Georgia, if you see, everywhere where you have been, I can see simplicity on movements. I can see you emphasizing on being very systematic, everyone being capable of learning the same things, and trying to learn how to read more than anything else. So definitely very organized. I think that you have a young team, and I think that, again, it's you are creating already that first step signature of building a program, which is so hard. It's actually, I don't know, in my opinion, getting people to believe in the product that you're trying to establish. When you're so used to something else, there comes this guy, trying to make try to make everyone do the same things when, especially at this level, Tom, everyone is playing professionally. They do their own thing, in different pro leagues. It's not easy to then tell them, hey, you do that, in your professional team, but then when you get back to your national team, these are the principles that we're going to use. Do you have involvement in that regard, Tom, where you can tell at least the player, hey, wherever you go, in whatever pro league you go, I want you trying to use the same principles, or like where you are right now in that process?
Well, I think what you're saying, I mean, that speaks to the character of the people that we get to coach on this team. And that's where I'm sharing some funny stories. So I'm kind of painting people in one light, but the women in this team are incredible. And one thing I tried to make. What's that?
Look at this movement. This is Tom right here. Simple movement, step, arms first, simple platform. Look at that.
Yeah, yeah, Max had a good summer.
All right. So sorry. Keep going.
No. Yeah, I mean, one thing I tried to make really clear from the beginning was just how much I respected the sacrifice they were making to do this. I mean, I think one thing, it's such a power, like people who are coaching on the international level, the professional level, like we just always wish our college players would understand like the level of sacrifice. Like these women are, I mean, these are elite world-class players who have to sleep on couches, like to do what they do, and have to put relationships and marriages on hold, and like keep their body pieced together. And it's a massive commitment. So I tried to make that really clear from the beginning how much I understood and respected that, and I wasn't coming from any place other than trying to make them good. And but I welcome their feedback and their conversations. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel, but I was trying to come to a decision together. It's like, look, this movement looks really efficient to me. Do you agree? Do you think you can do it? Do you think it'd be better if you would do it? Okay, let's do it. So we had lots of conversations like that. But it wasn't me. I really wasn't trying to coerce them. I was just like, hey, here's the evidence as I see it. How do you see it? And kind of going from there.
So you present them with research, some, at this level, you're talking with research in hand to every player about the things that you're trying.
Nah, maybe it's a little case by case. I think if I think I'm basically looking for whatever's going to resonate. So I think for most players that would get their eyes rolling back in their head. So I'll stay away from it. But I think that's one of the challenges. Like for our Olympic training block, we had to really have this super long film session about our basic defensive system, which was not the right time to have it. But I really had to work hard for analogies that made them understand why we were doing what we were doing. And I wasn't super fired up on the timing of that conversation, but I knew it was making me a better communicator. I knew it wasn't gonna be the last time I'd have to figure that out or figure out a way to talk like that.
To make them go middle, 2 by 2, and then.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of goes what you're saying. I mean, so most, I'm not putting a judgment on. It is what it is. So like most teams' defense is there's different packages and high level of movements. And I just couldn't be any further from that. I'm not labeled. It's just a fact. I'm here, and that system's over there. But most players play over there in that system. So it took forever to explain that. But it was good. I mean, it made me have to explain it better and more clear and simpler. So it was good.
What are things that are very correlational in the SEC towards winning? And then I want to know, like, kind of like you compare your experience now with head coaching a national team. Like, do the priorities have changed from the SEC until when you go Georgia type of level? The Canada national team level.
I don't think the priorities of the game changed too much. I think I think you have more options at the international level, like to do some different stuff, but it's not like I think it's more of a tweak than like this massive shift. It's not like blocking becomes the most important skill or something, but blocking is more impactful in the international level than the college level, just on the whole. So I think there's tweaks. I don't know if there's huge shifts in the priorities of the game, but I think that the jobs are very different. I think being a national team coach is a lot different than being a college coach. So, but in terms of the game is definitely different. It's played at a higher level, but serving and passing is still number one. You've got to kill it on the left side. But I think the offensive contribution of other players has a little bit more of a higher impact, just in general on the international level. For sure, you could show individual college teams that don't follow that, but again, I'm just painting with a really broad brush.
And I just talking about simplicity. The 3-step to every ball. Look at the setter, even in movements like this, how she's working with timing, along with the hitter as well. Those are small details that really make a difference. Look at their coordination. Look at the eye work of your outside. Keeping her eyes on the ball, but then the setter contact, and then look at the setter priority of trying to help with timing, with always taking the same steps. Hands ready, good athletic position, Okay, and then trying to take a right, left, right to the ball, and with a good pivot, keeping that ball inside for her to get a good shot to the line. And you're trying to keep kind of like a flat type of ball, even when it's an exclamation point type of pass there. Between exclamation and negative. Talk to me a little bit about the keys for that. How do you keep a fast-paced system in type of passes like this?
I think you just hit it on the head. I mean, I think the rhythm of the setter is everything for that. So like the rhythm leads to the power. So it's great that you picked up on that, and I think especially with Megan being in her senior year, she had gotten to a point with her fundamentals where we could just really talk about the nuances of the read and the rhythm, and how to do it on this pass versus this pass, which is kind of harder to get into with a freshman sometimes. So I think that rhythm allows for speed to happen more often, for sure.
And the other thing that I noticed here, so hard to teach middles how to get off the net, for any system and be available. Look how far off the net. And I have seen some of your videos working on getting middles off the net. Talk to me a little bit about this. Look at how far she is on this ball.
Yeah, she's just reading it. What's that?
She's basically in the middle right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think she just kind of read how far off the net that pass was and tried to get there.
What are elements that you work with your middles to make sure that they stay off the net, or what are things that you are telling them to make sure that there are options even when there's not positive or double positive type of pass, Tom?
I don't think there's any magic to it. I'm not saying anything anyone else doesn't, but we're just trying to read the pass, get a good 4-step approach, and step close to the setter.
Okay, cool. Hey, Tom, and then quick question in terms of feedback. What can you tell us about it? Have you done new research about feedback, or what type of feedback methods are you using, and what do you think is really important for us coaches to understand about that?
I mean, I'm always trying to learn about that. There's so much to it. I just kind of going back to Carl, right? The mind has a limited ability to process information, and the part of the brain that plays volleyball doesn't use language, right? So I think those are like the two bedrocks. So I got to speak in short phrases, and my phrases need to allow for transfer to happen, not inhibit transfer. So I want to speak in metaphors, right? I want them to be external. I want them to be exact. I want to conjure an image in your mind that's exactly what you need to do. Yeah, and those are kind of the guidelines. And then listening is so much a part of feedback. Obviously, like we got to observe how they're responding to it, and what their tone, their language, their body language, what they do the next play. I mean, the observation and the listening has got to shape the feedback, for sure. And there's just so much that goes into it. And we had Jim McLaughlin came to our gym a year ago, and that was a really good model for me because he's the best I've seen in terms of presenting the goal, injecting some belief, showing where it can lead, and then getting them focused on what they want to do the next rep. He's so good at it. And he's done it for so many years that it's just this really efficient loop where I'm kind of stuttering a little bit because I'm trying to think about all that stuff. So I'm in the middle of my own associative phase with that. But yeah, there's a lot to it, but it's limited ability to process information. Mind doesn't use language, so that's why we want to be external. And then listening, and is it working? Right? Is it working? It's not about my key. Is it like, are they actually getting better or not? So.
For the coaches out there, what can you tell me about the concept of state-dependent remembering? And what could we learn about it as coaches at any level?
Yeah, so I mean, that to me is kind of motor learning, like 2.0. I don't know. I think we're like in 3.0 now. But so it's well, I mean, now we know a little bit more about dynamical systems, right? Which is like everything is in the skill, So it's I think that's kind of what state-dependent remembering was trying to say when they came out with it. That the environment matters. So like, if I do something in this environment, it might be a little bit different in this new environment. But what we know now is like everything that's going into the moment of your performance, like that is the skill. So it's always going to be a little different. Like that's why practice will never be entirely like a game, right? Because it's a little different. There's not people around. It's not the same emotions. Like it's a never ending battle. You're constantly trying to get it more like the game, but you know, you're never going to quite attain it. So I think stage dependent memory was kind of, I feel like that was like the inkling that there's more than just the movement and the skill. Like, and I think now with dynamical systems, it's like, oh, that's why they came up with stage dependent memory. You know, so it's basically, I think that for me personally, it's just helped me with a level of mindfulness. Like everything about what's happening right now matters. Like everything, like their perspective, their emotions, how it happened, like how the other people performed within that skill, their energy level at that moment, like what everything matters and everything goes in the skill. And it's cool. And for me, it's just a good reminder for me that we're never going to be good enough at this. We're never going to know all of it. There's always gonna be more to learn. We're always gonna have to get better at it. It's just too complex. So yeah.
Coach, I know that you were part of the staff with Team USA when they were trying to implement the concept of the growth mindset. That's actually, we have Trevor Regan talking about it on Monday, but are you still deliberately wording that? And then why is this so important? Why is the growth mindset so important in our gym?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I read Growth Mindset, and I was the book Mindset, sorry, and I was like, okay, well, that's why I wasn't that great of a player, and like that's why I'm struggling as a coach, right? So it's but it was also like really empowering. It's just okay, like we're not stuck in anything. I mean, we can get better at anything. We just got to work hard and work smart, right? So I definitely, for a fair number of years, I did something really formally to introduce it, and I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But it's definitely one of our core statements, and it's definitely something we're talking about all the time. And it's just the whole deal, right? I mean, we're trying to learn how to learn. I had someone ask me the other day about like most important things for recruiting a player, and we want to be great learners, great competitors, and great teammates, right? And all three of those, they're obviously all three of them are interrelated. But learning, our ability to learn is so much. It kind of goes with the first thing you asked me. It's so much of the fuel of all that. You can call me a great competitor, you can call me a great teammate, but if I'm stuck on something and I'm not learning it in this moment, like it doesn't matter. Like, am I willing to learn this? And what always happens, we always get frustrated at the edges of our ability. That's part of the deal, right? So like that's what I've been having with my 7-year-old daughter, and that's what I have with myself. But when there's something in my character that I'm really frustrated with, right? When there's something in our volleyball game that I'm really frustrated in, when there's a challenge as a coach I'm really frustrated in. I mean, one of my jobs is to recognize like there's a reason I'm frustrated because I'm not good at it, and like so like it really sucks. It really sucks that I'm not good at it because I care about it, and I think that's the thing we got to understand too. And I wasn't very good at that. I'm still working on that, but part of the reason
when you are in the convention center recruiting an athlete, can you identify this player has a growth mindset, this player doesn't, and is it important to you at that point?
It's super important to me. I don't have 100% crystal ball on it, but you just look for the hard moments and how they respond. And if they're deflecting blame or they're deflecting the responsibility of the situation, it's there's a chance to grow there. So it's but when you see people who are like really owning it, really curious, really engaged, it's not about the mistake, it's about what we're gonna do now and learn. I mean, those are wow. Okay, like who doesn't want to be around a person like that, right? So it's.
Talk to me about the role of parents in the process of players nowadays, and then the process of actually you being sold on a player. That even includes national team level. Like, what kind of role do parents play on Tom Black being sold on a player that he wants on his team or not? Do they create a representation of the player, or do you feel that you're able to shape the player into what you want?
Well, again, it's not. I don't look. It's not me. It's like their development is a thing unto itself. It's not me. It's like there's so much more to it than that. And I'm not saying like I'm not trying to be like humble pie. It's like it's just a fact. It's like that's part of the dynamical systems. I mean, like they're who they are as a people, as a person. My influence is a teacher. Their influence as parents. The challenge they're going through and the way they're going. Like that's the development is that. So it's like what part do we play in that? So parents, I mean, honestly, they mean very little to me. Like when it's like, but I know that their impact has been enormous, right? So and I'm also not quick to judge. I mean, like parents do all sorts of stuff that drives me crazy. But I I don't know what happened behind closed doors for 20 years. And I know that this is a pretty good kid. So they obviously did something right. Like, I really wish they wouldn't do that stuff in the game, but most of the time they've clearly taught this kid to be responsible. They've clearly taught them to work hard. They've clearly taught them to be conscientious. So like, I'm not going to worry about what I don't like about it. It's not even relevant. It's I think all of us have lived long enough to know that none of us know the whole picture about everybody. And it ties into specificity. This kid's development is this kid's development. It's not even about the kid. It's about what they're doing with this thing. And I as a coach have a huge role to play in that, but I'm not the whole role. And I need to see it that way, because the more I see it like that, the more I can see it accurately and help to shape the environment as best I can.
What do you predict that is going to happen with the SEC now, and how does your season is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, we're on a bunch of committees for that. I think it's going to be modified. I think it'll be shorter, but I don't think it'll be immensely shorter. I think it'll be a lot more bus trips. I think we'll still have a preseason, but maybe it's like a week shorter.
You're still going to be able to travel and have a preseason and everything?
Yeah, we're trying to keep it regional, like most schools. So I think on paper it's going to look different, but not a lot different. I just think chaos is going to happen. I mean, I think teams are going to have to forfeit matches at some point, or I think that to me is more the situation. Then I think on paper it'll be like, oh yeah, it's just a shorter season, but it's not that big. But I think once the wheels come off, I think there'll be a lot of curveballs, and how we adapt to those curveballs will mean a lot towards the success of the season. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, if you asked me this a month ago, I was like, we're not playing at all. There's no way. But now I feel like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of the how, and probably just in conference. I don't know. That's how I see it. I do feel that based on the research, at least out there will be a second round of this pandemic, unfortunately. And when that happened, no one knows when that's going to be. Is it going to be in the middle of the season? Are we going to be facing a team that has someone, that has been involved with this situation? Are we going to still play against them? How is that going to be approached? So, there's just a lot of randomness into the current situation that looks to me very unpredictable. I think that we're just going to be able to predict the hour training session and then the first match. Those are the things that I'm really sure are going to happen. Aside from that, I think that there's a lot of variables that we don't have the answer for right now.
Yeah, and those variables make all the difference too, which is one of the challenges of this whole thing. So.
Mm-hmm. Last thing, how has this pandemic changed you or shaped you? Now that you have so much time in your hands, per se, have you had a long time to think about something that you really wanted to become or start that now you're going to implement as a coach, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still working through it. I'm curious how it's all going to work out. But like I said, I just think, between USA and LMU and then Georgia and Canada and starting my family through all that with 2 kids, I just think life was going at a really fast pace. So even when I slowed it down, it was still going really fast, kind of like I said. So I'm just trying to take some time to just get perspective on that and get a little more integrated as a person. And and that won't make me a worse coach for sure. So yeah, we'll see where it leads.
Tom, thanks so much for this great lesson. Such a humble guy, someone really willing to share his experiences. And I always think that someone that is willing to make fun of himself, it's someone that is in a good place about learning and about how he feels about himself. So, again, I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm honored to be talking to you today. I hope that this could repeat, and it doesn't need to be because we are in a bad situation. But, again, thanks for saying yes since the beginning, and, look forward seeing what you're going to continue to help Canada become. And then, of course, with UGA, what it's already becoming. So good luck with everything. And, you have a friend in me. Let me know if you need anything from myself.
No, it's vice versa. An honor to be here. You've got so many amazing guests. Thanks for doing this. I mean, so many people are benefiting from this. So it's a really cool deal. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, man. And I'll see everyone tomorrow, and we're going to have Kevin Hambley, the current NCAA national champion. So I hope that everyone enjoy the rest of the day today, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you.